This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel.
Welcome back to Take a Break. I'm Tim Stenavec in New York. Well, what we just heard was part of Trump's message to his supporters on Wednesday after the attack at the U.S. Capitol. As images of the siege dominated our screens last night, questions began to circulate on the rioters' mentality. Dr. Janja Lalich joins me now. She's a specialist in cults, extremism, and coercive influence and control, and a professor emerita of sociology at California State University, Chico. Professor Lalich, thanks so much for being here. Help us understand the mindset behind a large group of people that decides to do something like this.
Well, I think what we're seeing is kind of evidence of a cult on a national scale. And it seems to me that his followers, thousands of his followers, are in what we might call a cultic relationship with Trump. And the little bit of the speech that you just played is kind of evidence of that he's in a sense both gaslighting and what we call love bombing his followers, saying he loves you, saying, I understand how you feel. He's like trying to relate to them in a way and keep them encouraged. And so he to them is their new Messiah. And unfortunately, I think we have a huge lack of critical thinking among a good part of the population here. And this is the outcome of that. I
want to make sure I'm understanding this right. There's actually a sociological term or sociological terminology to unpack with the president's video yesterday when it comes to the way that he did mention that he loved his supporters.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, that's what cult leaders do is they, with cult leaders, they're so volatile. You never really know if they're going to, when they arrive, whether they're going to be nice and loving or whether they're going to be hateful and chastising. But in this case, he came out and he definitely, while he had this sort of weak message telling them he wanted peace and to go home, what they're hearing is that he loves them and that he's in alignment with them and that he understands them. And that just encourages them more to behave the way they have.
We talk a lot about misinformation and the way that misinformation has proliferated online and on social media, on YouTube and on tech platforms. Where does misinformation come into all of this?
Well, misinformation is the way in which he keeps his followers in this sort of altered reality. The vast amount of misinformation that we've had for the past 4 years, starting with the size of his inauguration 4 years ago, it is a way in which people are kept enclosed in that reality and reinforce each other. And so that they constantly need to be fed this misinformation to rile up his followers.
In your experience, both as a professor and correct me if I'm wrong here, but as a member, a former member of something that resembled a cult, how does one break free from a following like this?
Well, that's a difficult question. And when something like this happens on a national scale, it's quite different from, my case where, we had a cult of a couple of hundred people. Generally, individuals will have a moment when, either because they've had discussions with someone or they've had enough doubts that finally they've had enough and they see that they're in a troubling kind of organization or a troubling situation, they need to leave. I was just talking to someone this morning about how do we do this with thousands of people? Because that's what's dangerous here is the vast number of people and thinking about how to communicate with them in a way that they'll hear so that they can start thinking rationally again.
One thing that I think has surprised many observers here is the way that other Republicans have latched on to the idea that this was not a free and fair election. There has been no evidence to actually document that there was widespread voter fraud in any case, but that hasn't stopped other senators, Republicans, from spreading that message. What is the role that they have?
Well, those are his enablers. They're helping to keep that myth alive. They're obviously, whether they actually believe it, only they know that. But obviously, they're trying to protect their positions and trying to protect what Trump's image of them is going to be, so that they don't lose his support or his supporters. But those are the enablers. Those are, what we call sort of the inner circle, or the lieutenants around a cult leader, who are essentially very vital in pushing out that information to the followers.
Because of the spread of misinformation, Professor Lodge, I do think that a lot of people watching right now find themselves in a situation that I've discussed with friends of mine, which is how to communicate and help those who have found themselves going down these rabbit holes of misinformation. What advice would you have for people watching right now on sort of how to talk to these things, talk to people about these things, loved ones, friends and family who are sharing misinformation?
Well, I think the most important thing is to not be combative, not be confrontational, to very mildly try to insert seeds of doubt. We always say people in cults, and probably in this situation as well, people have doubts and they keep kind of shoving them in the back of their head. And at some point, there'll be one more thing that can add to kind of breaking that shelf and them having them being able to finally entertain other points of view. So it's important to, I think, be understanding, which I know is difficult when people are behaving in the way that some of them are behaving, but to try to, insert facts, insert ideas that are different, try to engage them in a discussion without it going, wild or hostile.
Dr.
And I know that's difficult, but it's the only thing that really works.
Yeah, it can make for some difficult conversations around the Thanksgiving Zoom screen, I think. Dr. Janja Lalich, Professor Emerita of Sociology. Dr. Lalich, thank you so much for your time.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quicktake now for insight in an instant.